The road south from Xiangyang was rough going. It was dotted with piles of loose stones, sometimes strewn over the surface already. For a short distance out of the city, they had been hammered down to create a smooth road. Liu Bei and his large entourage travelled to the point where the efforts had been abandoned and waited. They saw Liu Biao's carriage approaching on the horizon. It struggled over the cobbles and kicked up huge clouds of grey dust, eventually coming to a halt a mile away. A large train of people had been running along behind it, but it was only Liu Biao and a small staff that arrived at the threshold of the finished road. "Ah, my good nephew, we meet at last," Liu Biao said with a polite bow. Liu Bei returned the bow, saying, "Surely you are mistaken. It is you who are the nephew." Under the glares of Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, Liu Biao shakily agreed. Liu Bei smiled broadly and invited Liu Biao back to the city. As they walked, they shared family stories and conducted themselves as uncle and nephew should. Inside the city, though, they were disturbed by the sounds of wails and cries. From all quarters, people appeared at the side of the road and called out to Liu Biao, praising his worth and begging forgiveness for their separation. Liu Bei, infuriated, claimed that they were distressing his guest with their moaning and had his soldiers clear a peaceful route to the court. Once all were seated inside, Liu Biao said, "My noble uncle, when the emissaries of Prime Minister Dong spoke of you, they did not portray your heroism truthfully. It is also true that the majesty of civilization in Jing province was underplayed to me," Liu Bei offered in response. "However, upon hearing that the traitor Dong had turned these lands against the Han, how could I not be aghast? Now that I am here, will you not see reason, nephew? Since you have already said the words I have planned myself, allow me to explain a certain dilemma," Liu Biao began. "After being undeservedly entrusted with Jing province, I have worked only to see its people prosper. That is why I didn't take easily to war. I heard the cries that the imperial house was in danger, but from the mouths of those who would topple the imperial house themselves, how could a Liu listen earnestly? Nay, it was clear to me that the Dong clan, lacking in its next generation and without a clear mind among them, poses no threat to the imperial line. Rather, it is the subtle and clever men who fight to replace him who stand a real chance at surviving usurpation. Should that happen, all corners of the empire would be plunged into a new warring states period. What then would become of Jing as the centerpiece of that war? In the end, I was left with two options: to war for my family and see it destroyed by its paper allies thereafter, or to war against it so that all might tip back into balance. For Jing, only the latter choice steered clear of devastation. While I forsook one virtue to cultivate another, the locusts have now come and gone, leaving me humbled before you. If I am to remain true to myself, what can I do but reverse my errors? Uncle, please accept my useless apologies on behalf of all my people. Despite our grievous transgressions, will you let us be, Imperial Caretaker?" Unable to hold back his tears, Liu Bei leapt forward and kowtowed on the ground before Liu Biao. "With such unprecedented foresight, how can I dare refuse any of your desires?" Liu Bei said. "I was not aware that I was in the presence of a man with wisdom that rivaled Guan Zhong or surpassed Zhang Liang." These almost sacred invocations of legendary men of past eras brought a pang of guilt to Liu Biao's stomach. His lengthy reasoning for war had not been the product of his own mind, yet this did not seem like the time to expose details that Liu Bei might find unsavory. That day, the war with Jing ended, with Liu Biao allowed to retain control of all but the caretaker's prize of Xiangyang. With the respected keystone of the coalition against pretenders now gone, the young Lord Sun Ce of the Southlands sent his apologies also. Now, only two of the coalition members remained at large, Liu Yao of Jianye and Kong Rong of Qing. In the case of the latter, News of Liu Bei's capitulation spurred a furious campaign towards Langye, led by Director General Zhu Shou. However, encamped on the main road was Zhao Yun. Despite the warrior's stalwart reputation, Zhu Shou laughed merrily when he saw the Liu camp. It was located in a depression crisscrossed by rough ground and filled with dry copses. There was no end to the strategies that could easily crush such a camp, so much so that Zhu Shou feared it was all a ruse. But in truth, Zhao Yun's strategist, Cheng Shu, had made sure to give no advice for or against the position, leaving Zhao Yun's gut feelings in command. Still, Zhu Shou was cautious. He approached noisily during the day so that Zhao Yun's men would assemble against him. Then he ordered his crossbows to begin their bombardment. With the Imperial Crossbow Factory being located in Beihai, these troops had arms and training fit for the Emperor's guards. Bolts thudded down like hailstones, knocking men to the ground and punching through the shields they held aloft. Cheng Shu merely closed his eyes and fanned his face in the center of the camp. But Zhao Yun had other ideas. Leading a handful of horsemen, he raced from the east gate to face down the crossbowmen, while his lieutenant Gao Ding burst out to the west. Both were outnumbered, yet the ferocity of their charge caught Zhu Shou's men off guard. Many began to flee, but as swords and spears were brought to bear on the horsemen, the pursuit ended and a desperate melee broke out. Believing such recklessness was a sign of weakness, Zhu Shou ordered some men to attack the camp. But getting inside proved difficult. Zhao Yun's army was mostly armed with bows, and as Zhu Shou's formations descended the slope into the camp, the angle of the hill gave the Liu troops a wide target. In this way, Zhu Shou lost as many troops as Zhao Yun had to the initial barrage, and yet soon Zhao's archers were face to face with the enemy. Zhu Shou's troops would have easily broken inside had their numbers not been depleted by the absence of the companies chasing Zhao Yun and Gao Ding back and forth nearby. The pair battled, shouted and dashed without tiring, although they no longer had any horsemen at their backs. The troops attacking the camp became frustrated and fell back, but more arrows and bolts came in their place, flattening what remained of the camp's defenders. Confused troops begged Cheng Shu for a plan. He sighed, looked about the hills around him, and said, "At this hour it is wisest to attack from the east and to command from the west. Zhu Shou must be on that hill there. Let General Zhao Yun cover the east. Go and cut the head from the dragon, and we shall have nothing to worry about." The camp was emptied of troops in a last charge through the west gate. They pushed up a wooded hill, and indeed found Gao Ding fighting with Zhu Shou's retinue alone. With a roar, the Liu troops joined the fray, and Zhu Shou broke into a sweat. "My poor friend," Cheng Shu mused to himself. "When even the mindless thrashings of a brute like Zhao Yun can produce victory, what use is there for men like us? Such will be heaven's new age, yet it permits we live on. Perhaps there is reason to be revealed." On the eastern slopes, Zhao Yun's spear cast General Pang Ke from his horse. This Kong commander wasted no time in kowtowing and surrendering. Then, with a single look, Zhao Yun sent the terrified remnants of the attacking force fleeing into the woods. Gao Ding returned to camp with Zhu Shou's head hanging at his horse's chest. The battle was over. At least half of the Liu army was dead, but the loss of Zhu Shou hurt Kong Rong's enterprise far more. Langye City faded beyond his grasp. His eyes then turned to an easier, if less strategic target, Donglai, a city on the northern coast of Qing, which thanks to his promotion to Inspector of Qing Province was his territory by right. He sent a small force to rout Liu Bei's appointees from the country towns. Some raised troops and resisted violently in confusing scuffles where both sides were flying Han banners. The battles concluded in Kong Rong's favour, and the march on Donglai continued. But by now, the whole drama of the coalition's war was spilling over into neighbouring regions. In the north, there was a famous lord named Yuan Shao. He came from a prestigious family, which had served the Han emperors in high office for a century. In this age of uncertainty, the continuity of the family legacy required decisive action to support the throne, and finally he had his chance. Within hours of the news from Lang Ye arriving in his camp in nearby Bohei, he ceased his activities against the local Yellow Turbans and marched upon the overly rich Kong Rong instead. In Xiangyang, Liu Bei was like a horse let out into a field after a long winter. "What a morning to witness!" he cried out. "There are loyal men yet, and justice surges like a great wave. Brothers, we shall push to the crest and guide it forward. In the Western Mountains, the traitor Dong has ousted Han officials and taken direct control of Shangyong Commandery. The reason is simple. In those hills, there is an old road to Chang'an that avoids the Hangu Pass. If we controlled Shangyong, the Emperor would be in our grasp." Carried along by Liu Bei's enthusiasm, the brothers bowed and repeated their vows to give their lives to rescue the Emperor. Liu Bei hurriedly got them up and called for a feast. He invited various local scholars to the proceedings and asked various questions about the routes westward. Then, out of the blue, he asked, "Wise friends, surely you have all heard of Lady Zheng, Queen of Bingzhou. What manner of a family has she?" There was confusion at this non sequitur, but someone said, "I know a man who has paid tribute to Lady Zheng. He arrived here recently from Taiwan. He told me that he had to close his shop in order to give the requested sum of silver in celebration for the birth of the third Prince of Bing. These three princes are known as Wenbo, Ju, and Gongming. Princes they are not, but such is the pomp of a puffed-up bandit. These children are sired by her husband." "Yes, I forget his name. It was nobody of note, a landowner from the mountains. What other stock could she hope to attract?" "Ah, you're right. Why even speak of it?" Liu Bei said. He changed the subject, but his taste for the evening's joviality was gone, and he soon retired to bed. Fighting carried on around Lang Ye for the next 2 weeks, in which time Zhao Yun repelled a desperate attempt to drive south by one of Zhu Shou's protégés. All of the Kong officers involved were killed in the process, leaving the road to his capital at Beihai unguarded. Enough time had passed also for Kong Rong to learn of Yuan Shao's ambitions upon his territory. With a defeat in the east to swallow, and further defeats soon to be at hand, Kong Rong loaded 100 carts with silk and precious stones and travelled to Zhao Yun's camp. Zhao Yun sent for Liu Bei, who raced to Pengcheng to meet with Kong Rong's party. Kong Rong, dressed in flowing turquoise robes, bowed before Liu Bei and placed a narrow short sword on the ground before him. "Old friend," he said, "please, I request that you use this sword to kill me. It has been passed down my line since ancient times and cut the bread of my great ancestor. Let the rule of law be confirmed. Let Confucius' blade kill this wayward man, even though he bears its master's name. Brother Kong, do you forget how we fought together against the great rebel army of Zhang Jue? You were like my mentor then, and so it remains. Why would I spoil good wine by mixing it with water? Lord Liu, I was taken from my senses. I have brought peril to you, a man to whom I owed a life debt and who is my senior in rank. If I am not punished, how will order be maintained? Losing you would be like losing my voice, Liu Bei insisted. You were lied to by Liu Biao. He has taken full responsibility. Liu Biao, Kong Rong said, now finally looking up. It was not Liu Biao who put my hand to that silk, but Cao Cao. He bore the Emperor's word. It was false, Guan Yu shouted quickly. Kong Rong returned his head to the ground. Of course, he said. So it was Cao Cao. When Liu Biao... He may be my kin, but how can I not think him a fool? He covered his own deception so that I would not think less of him. With these words, Liu Bei paced about with clenched fists. At least you admitted it, he added. I would never dare to deceive you. The Kong family has served House Liu since the slaying of the White Dragon, so it remains, Kong Rong said.
You slimy weasel, Zhang Fei said. Just a moment ago you were begging death for your crimes. Now you take advantage of Elder Brother's kind heart and pretend it was all someone else's fault. You should be executed for that crime alone.
Younger brother, Guan Yu said, stepping in front of a fuming Zhang Fei. Have you not spent any time walking beside the river? The fishermen there have rumbling bellies, but they do not eat the worms and insects they have collected. Think of what Elder Brother could achieve with Kong Rong as his servant.
You think this bookworm won't wriggle off the hook?
Generals, I pledge everything I have to Lord Liu Bei's cause, Kong Rong said. Liu Bei took his hands and held them tightly. Brother Kong, I have long dreamed that we could work together to save the Empire. Let your misdeeds be erased by merit for now, so that one day the Emperor might review your service and judge you a worthy bearer of Kung Fu Zi's sword. The blade was returned to its owner, and with it Kong Rong cut his hand, declaring, Let the heavens witness it. I swear to recover the Empire and will gladly exterminate my own family if I fail. This pact brought Kong Rong into Liu Bei's system of caretakership, giving him say over lands in Qing, Yan, and even Ji across the Yellow River. With this, Liu Bei became one of the most powerful men in China, easily rivaling Dong Zhuo. This momentum pushed him west out of Shanyang and into Dong Zhuo's quiet mountain fiefdoms. Those obliged to resist his advance lasted less than a day. The administrative center of Shangyong Commandery was close to the border and fell immediately after. Liu Bei stayed only a short while personally, for he was summoned back to Shanyang to meet with important embassies. He received the rogue of Guanling, Zhang Chao, who had finally returned from the wilderness after fleeing from Zhao Yun the year before. He was granted safe harbour within the caretakership, although his lands remained forfeit, on the condition that he vouch for Liu Bei to the other signees of the coalition against pretenders. With his help, Liu Biao agreed a pact of non-aggression between the two branches of House Liu, which effectively confirmed Liu Bei as not only the legitimate ruler of Yu, Shu and Yang, but as the governor of Shanyang. Now only Liu Yao remained at large, but Shahudun had already prepared boats to cross the Yangtze River and pay him a visit in force at his seat in Jianye. There was even a most welcome embassy from Gongsun Zan, Liu Bei's former classmate. Now even the exemplary student Zan paid respects to the delinquent Bei, his political superior. That, more than anything, filled Liu Bei with a long-burning pride. Feeling like he was on top of the world, he sent out a summons to a distant city, Shihe. It was the de facto capital of Zhengjiang. After Liu Bei's victory over the coalition against pretenders, how could the coalition to rescue the emperor deny him, to say nothing of Zhengjiang herself? What would the queen and her coalition think of him now? Read on.